Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public service announcement from the heart of the whale. Whale Certified is here to entertain and to inform. And there's no better information to get out than to be able to have the people who know. Uh, I have two guests from Addiction is Real. And I want you to know that I know that you know. The way of being Irish, it isn't about being falling down drunk. It's a very beautiful way of life. And this addiction is real. Conversation needs to be had in a deep, thoughtful, caring way to share. Uh, I'm amazed by these two women of significance who say that there is no bad conversation. Whatever you start where you're at and you build, because we talk from the language of the heart. And my two guests have, it's been since the beginning of Whale Certified. I've wanted to unite with these two women, and I didn't know their names or who they were. And then I come to find out that I knew one of them from the old neighborhood, and their organization is, I've never heard it just a couple weeks ago. So here they are. And the reason we were saying this is that because of me. I stumbled, I bumbled, I fumbled, I was a mess. But it never gave, I was never totally hopeless because there was people there in my life who knew and cared and shared with them, with themselves, from themselves to me, that allowed me to be myself. And so here we go, all these years, I'm 68 right now, is that coming to this point is I have arrived. And my two friends go by the name Pam from the old neighborhood and Erin, Erin, who is kind of like the go-to person for, and Pam's the creator of Addiction is Real. And so all this is said, you'll come to find out about the whale, but I really want to get into these two women of significance who they have that conversation so they can save lives. And Pam, I'll go with you. You're the neighborhood gal, which you and yours, happy St. Patrick's Day, and that I'll say it publicly. Uh, I've always been an admirer of yours. Uh, from afar, I might have, I've spoken more to you in the last couple of weeks than I did my entire life. But the deal is that you always have that class and style, and that you have a spirit of love. And when I found out of your woe, my heart broke with you, and you're helping me to mend my broken heart, Pam. And I wish you and yours nothing but the best. And if you could possibly give us, what was it? How was it that it became that you sought this, that you reached out to make this organization become?
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for your kind words. Um, my son, Justin, when he was a kid, he was an athlete every sport. He was an A student in every class. He was full of personality, tons of friends. He was a lot like me. We had the same type of personality. We liked to entertain. Uh, he was just, well, he was the love of my life. And so he grew up, and in high school, we caught him smoking pot, and we did what we knew to do, and that was ground him, take the car away. We drove him everywhere, but at some point, you have to let them back out into the wild. And so he came up grounding, said he'd never do that again. Never knew if he did. Probably thought, well, it's just a rite of passage. But he then went away to college. We went to Mizzou. And there, of course, he wasn't living with me. And I do believe that's where his addiction started. Justin, when he was a kid, was diagnosed with ADD. And I think there's some sort of self-medication to make yourself feel better. I think we have to talk to our kids who are diagnosed with ADD or ADHD about self-medicating. But he came home after he graduated from college and lived at home so he could save money. And he got a great job with a big organization here in St. Louis, and he was in the management training program. And all of a sudden, he was laid off because they had a big layoff, and he was last in, first out. So he was at home looking for a job, I thought, but nothing was happening. In fact, he was starting to sleep all day. He'd be up all night. I didn't see him looking for a job. I couldn't get him to do anything around the house, and this was not my Justin. Completely different person. And after quite a while of trying to get him back, I finally walked up to him one day and said, "Is it drugs?" And he looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "Yes, I need help." I almost hit the floor because even though I asked the question, I didn't expect that answer, not from my Justin. So I took him to a physician who sent us to a psychologist, who sent us to a rehab here in the area. It was just a 2-week program, and 2 weeks is not enough, I'm here to tell you. So he came home, and I was so naive because I really didn't know anything about addiction or even drug use. I didn't use drugs, and my friends didn't use drugs. So I really was so naive. So he came back home and, oh, gung-ho, I'm going to find a job, blah, blah, blah. My husband and I had a trip to Europe planned that we had been planning forever. And I knew I didn't want to leave my 20-something-year-old son at home by himself. So he went to live with my mother while we were gone. While we were gone, he relapsed. We came home, found another rehab facility out in Arizona. He was there for a month. While he was there, they had a week of parental education. My husband, Marty, and I went, and that's when we really learned what addiction was. There was no just say no. Once you're addicted, you are a different person. Your brain has completely changed physically. And that urge, that draw to the drug is so strong. I didn't understand all of that. So that week was so important for my husband and I. And it was important for Justin. When we got there, he had already detoxed. He was my old Justin. He came up to me. I could see it physically, a change in his face. So we had a great visit that week. We come home, and when his time ended there, they said they recommended that he not come back to St. Louis because of triggers and old contacts, things like that. And they wanted him to go to a sober living facility. We found one in Austin, Texas, and he flourished there. He was the leader of anything there needed to be a leader of. If he was the one who made the grocery list, he did the grocery shopping, he planned movie night. I mean, these things sound trivial, but for a man who had lost control of his life, he had control. And that was my Justin, the leader. Marty and I went out there to visit him. And again, there was my son. We had a great visit. And then we came home. And when his time ended there, which was over a month, no, it was like 3 months, I believe, they then said he was ready for step down sober living. He wasn't quite ready to come home. So he went into another community where they had to either be in school or have a job. And they had curfew and they were tested every day. And again, he just flourished. So among these 3 different episodes, rehab, sober living, and then step down sober living, we came up to about a year. And it was Christmas time. My stepson lives in Dallas, and Justin got permission to come to Dallas for Christmas. And he did. And he said to us, it's time. I want to get my own place. I want to get a job. And he looked around his brother's house and said, I want this. Because his brother, Doug, had a family. He had children. He had a beautiful career. He had a beautiful home and a beautiful wife. That's what Justin wanted out of life. And so we agreed. He got an apartment in Austin with a guy he had been in step down with, who was also very committed to his sobriety, and I believe is still sober to this day. So they got an apartment. And then a third guy who was graduating or left sober living step down moved in just for a while and slept on the couch. And he brought drugs with him. So he was there for a couple of weeks. And we were going to Dallas for the funeral of my daughter-in-law's father. And Justin was going to meet us there. And the day we were driving there, he called and said he had had a car accident and totaled his car. And so my brain exploded and I knew something wasn't good, that he was probably using again. The next day we were in Dallas and I was supposed to see Justin that day, and I kept calling him and he always responded to me, always. And by 10:30 that night, the group of us are settling down in the living room and we were going to watch a movie, and the phone rang. And it was the Creve Coeur police, because we lived in Creve Coeur at the time. They said they had been trying to find us all day because Justin had passed away. I'm telling you, 11 years later, it's no easier telling this story. But there we were, thank God, with family. Both of my stepchildren and their families were there. That would be the end of Justin's story, his physical story, because he's still very real for me. But then came a messenger to my house, an angel, who said she had been to a book signing in a friend's basement. A young man, Jude Hassan, had written a book called Suburban Junkie. He grew up in St. Louis. He had written this book, and it's an incredible read, by the way, and I am recommending it. I read that book, and she told me, this angel who came to me, who was actually one of Justin's babysitters, who said, they're getting ready to start an organization to educate parents. You ought to call him. And I did. And that's where Addiction is Real started. I was not the originator. Jude and another, our previous executive director, were really the groundbreaking people. And at the time, we put together a teenage bedroom that we would travel around to schools and churches, whoever would have us. And in that teenager's bedroom were over 70 items that should alert a parent to the fact that their child was either using, abusing, selling. It is dynamic. So we're still doing this. And at this point, I am going to turn you over to Erin Johnston, who is our current executive director and has taken this small group of people to the extreme next level. She's absolutely incredible, and I'd like for her to tell the rest of the story of Addiction is Real.
Hey, Pam, thank you so much for sharing that story. Kevin, I can't say enough about the fact that when I joined this organization in late 2022, meeting so many parents, so many individuals who had turned what is the biggest tragedy anybody could ever go through into something positive and so life-giving for so many other people. I can tell you with 100% certainty that Justin's story has saved many, many lives. But beyond that, what Pam and the original group that founded this organization have done is turned a word that I will say 10 years ago, even when I heard the organization's name, I was really hesitant. I had hired them to come out and do one of their interactive displays for an event at Lindbergh High School. And we had a lot of conversation about even putting the logo on things or even mentioning the name of the organization that was coming in to do this display. It has been incredible to watch the difference between now and 10 years ago. And the word addiction and the title of the organization is Addiction is Real, and how much that has become accepted within our community. We were at a funeral recently for a family that we had helped, and I bet I had 20 different individuals that came up to me in the room and they said, "Man, I was so glad to hear that this family just shouted out loud what had happened to their child so that it doesn't happen again." And again, that's the gift that Pam and her entire crew that founded this have really brought to the world, I think, Kevin. I know that you have a history with addiction. I know my interest really started. Um, my son was in sixth grade. A couple of years before that, he had lost his paternal grandmother to a heroin overdose. The fentanyl issues within his dad's family, and then some issues that my family has dealt with addiction, has really taught me that this disease is stealing people's time. With my son specifically and his dad's family, I have seen the amount of, just devastation this family has gone through in growing up with that element, but also the individuals that they were around because of it, and how much every single one of his dad and his siblings suffered because they had just grown up with this trauma constantly in their life. And addiction is something that affects, I would have to say, probably half the households within any given community. Everybody is touched by it. So thank you for having us on, Kevin. It's such an important topic to talk about.
Right on. It's been November the 23rd, 1986, but I'm not keeping count.
Hey, congratulations. That's incredible.
Yeah. And how it came was one person telling their story, and that their story evolved around a book called The Big Book. And they have steps. So, that old story, the elevator is broken, you got to take the steps. And the first step is honesty, the principle of honesty. And the guy said, hey, man, you have choices, and you may not have chosen the choice, but that's the only way. And and you know this, and so that's why I'm able to tell you. is that Pam Justin is an inspiration for many and many. It's not a failure. That uh, there is no end. It's forever and ever. And I I can close my eyes and think about the day before the sobrieties. My mother said that you are no longer my son,
Mm.
and I took that to on a bending knee, saying, "Man, I really messed up. How
Oh,
can a nice Irish guy like myself, the mother doesn't even." But talking to you, I realized that my mother didn't say no longer my son, because when I came back sober and talked sober and acted sober, my son is back. Is
mhm.
is that that's what the addiction does? It robs, it steals, it rapacious creditor. It is cunning, baffling, powerful. It is the whole story of, man. You can't do it alone, bro. No can do.
You
And
know, Kevin, when I first learned that Justin had an addiction issue, my husband and I decided we would not tell people. And my immature brain, or I thought, well, when he snaps out of it, I don't want people, I don't want him to have that reputation. And it soon became clear we were not going to be able to keep this a secret. And I am telling you, when they say it takes a village,
yeah,
our support system, our friends, my family, my sister and brother-in-law saved Justin's life one night. And anybody who's trying to keep it a secret, it eats you up.
yeah,
And
But
I don't think
support
many of us
from
are very good at keeping that secret either. That's something
no,
I've noticed.
yeah, that is very true. Yeah,
Many people I think will you think they're keeping that secret really well, but man, Pam, there is something to that strength that you have provided with other people by saying that story. I hear this all the time. The individuals from Heal Stop Heroin as well, they waited 10 years to share their son's story. And the amount of good they have seen come from, that just being really, really honest and really vulnerable with everybody and saying, this went on in my own household and I don't want it to go on in yours.
right.
Kevin, I think that that's one of the coolest thing this organization does is focus on really, really early intervention. So, we're training parents how to spot visible signs of risk and protective factors in these interactive displays that Pam talked about called Hidden in Plain View. Um, so we're actually bringing people that are middle school, preschool, elementary school, high school parents in, and we're showing them, hey, listen, if this is your kid's bedroom, here are the things that we would like you to look for. So, when we want to look for those risk factors, 50% of addiction is some sort of a familial history, or it is a lot of times we're seeing undiagnosed mental health or mental health issues that aren't really being treated to the level that they need to be. So a lot of what we're looking for is there a family history of this? Is there something more that this kid needs support in as they're growing up? Are there, a lot of family members that are experiencing addiction right now? Is this child growing up in a high risk household? It was something I was really worried about for my son when he was in middle school. Just starting to hear kids joke about even vaping or THC or drinking. If somebody has that true genetic predisposition to develop addiction because of familial history, that is something they truly need to understand. They need to be very careful with, and they need to stay ahead of. So how do you do that? That's bringing as many protective factors, or we call them green flags. Risk factors are called red flags. But what are those things you walk in the kids' room and see they're good? You want to make sure they have strong relationships. You want to make sure they have a lot of adults that they can trust and talk to, which I think is a message that's completely different than the one we got when we were younger. It was, don't share anything with strangers. Don't, don't talk to people about problems within your family or within your household. Instead, we really want these kids to be able to reach out and talk about their mental health. Let an adult in their life that they trust know, hey, I'm really having a rough time right now. Several of the things we talk about is, does your child have personal goals? Do they have their own identity that they're developing? Or are you allowing them to pick out their own clothes? Do they have personal interests? Are they setting those goals that are so important for them as they develop into high school students and college students? It's okay for parents to be involved. I know that that's something that when my son was younger, there was almost this kind of peer pressure to let him on his own a lot more than I was comfortable with. And I was always the mom that was going to be there for the PTA groups, and I was just around him as much as possible because I knew how important that was. But I think other people understanding, like, hey, it's okay to be in your kid's life. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to set rules. That's what these kids are looking for. But when they come home, are we showing them good things? Or are we showing them riskier things? So if you've had a bad day, do you say, oh my gosh, I need to grab a glass of wine? Or is it, you know what, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to do some artwork. I'm going to do these different things that I know will help me clear my head and help me de-stress. Are we showing kids it's crack open a beer or grab some THC? We hear a lot of different things right now. But that's what the organization really does, is we're just trying to change that landscape. So, how are you approaching these topics with your kid? You've got to do it very, very vocally, very openly, very honestly, and from as young of an age as possible.
Man, uh, I want to, if something would happen to me right now, I want to leave. Hey, it's not just nothing but terrible stories. Everything is terrible turns over into magnificent. It's like a fourth dimension, but it's real. That the promises of being an addict when you put the plug in the jug, or the drugs, you stop the whole addiction substance way, and you pay attention to the mental health stresses of everyday life. And I'm telling you, I had to look in the mirror since November 23rd, 1986, and it wasn't easy. But I was, but
And Kevin, was your addiction alcoholism? Is that
that was my choice. Yeah, but I do realize addiction is addiction is addiction is substance. I was taking a chemical. It's ether. Just add water. And I'm going around thinking I could be somebody, you know. And I had, I had coming up, and but that whole idea when you said, Pam said about ADD or ED, oh my God, I had it before I even knew I had it, and and so all this story, predisposition, it's a reality that needs to be addressed in a very mature manner. And I don't miss it at all that my life has done good. I think I've lived longer sober than I've drunk. And I started drinking when I was 5 years old. I got
Oh,
I got
goodness?
I got caught underneath the sink with somebody uh, in somebody's kitchen. It was unbelievable. So, but the whole story goes is that I love the way you all have connected to say, listen, you got to be cunning. You got to know stone cold truth. And you got to have that hope. So when somebody asks, hey, what's going on? Uh, my mom's going he knows she knows that your mom's gonna call, and they're gonna say, hey, you gotta come home, we got a problem. To be able to escape that peer pressure, uh, I found out that you have uh, these little ways to, uh, when you have a problem, you can lower it down. You can make it real instead of using words, fight or flee. That you could, hey, and people that know me, Pam, they said, "Wow, the whale is back. You like the old whale? Like is that it's I'm bringing myself to thy own self be true." And
Well, there is a very physical difference. There was in my case with Justin of what he looked like. I mean, it's one of the signs. Uh, the change in grooming, the change in ambition, the look in his face. It when he was sober again, oh my God, completely different picture. I mean, there really is a physical difference.
oh yes,
And the thing that I hear the most is kids telling me. So these are kids that started pretty heavy drug use at 13, 14 years old, and they'll tell you, I just never feel okay. I am not comfortable. I'm anxious in public. There's a lot about themselves that just doesn't feel right. Now, if we were having open, honest conversations with kids, I would be telling them right back. There's a lot of times where I don't feel comfortable. There's a lot of times where I don't feel all right. There's a lot of times where I don't feel like I belong somewhere. And as adults, we kind of learn to take deep breaths and figure out how to interact or figure out how to be in a situation. A lot of times what happens as a kid at the age of 12, 13, 14 that first uses a heavy drug, it immediately fixes what they feel is wrong with them in their brain.
Right.
Um, Now, what they don't understand is that's something they're going to have to keep increasing and increasing, increasing. And then a lot, Pam, like you had said with Justin, you can see it when it happens because it's such a dramatic shift. It's not a magic pill. It's not something you take and it's going to fix everything that's wrong with you. It is something that is going to do nothing but create problems for you down the road. But if you're somebody that, is not neurotypical, specifically ADHD, OCD, there's a lot of those that, the first time they use drugs or alcohol, it's going to feel a lot better. But if we're not making sure we have these conversations really often and really, really directly and just saying, hey, there's other ways to go about this. There's other ways to figure this out. There's a psychiatrist we can go see. Um, Pam, I don't mean to simplify your situation at all. What you guys went through with Justin was absolutely horrible. But the common theme I hear is that this was the best kid in the room. This is the kid that,
Yeah.
was the brightest light. They were going places. They knew how to rally a crowd. When you said he was in charge of everything that he could be in charge of, that does not surprise me at all because it's such a common theme.
Hmm.
I think we're doing a little bit better with kids now that we have, the different tech school programs, and there's different ways to go about being educated when you're younger. But the more we can do to help these kids that feel like they don't necessarily belong, really help them get to the point where they feel like they do and they feel that confident. Gosh, he could have been president of the world, right?
Right. He could have.
And so, that's the Kevin, that's the thing that we're really trying to get to the bottom of is, how do we help parents spot this so much sooner? How do we help them really truly get ahead of this with their child? How do we help them teach their kid replacement behaviors? Or just, I tell parents all the time now, it's a lot different than when I was growing up. And when, I think dare or just say no, those were the different messages. Instead of making sure that child is keeping themselves away from everything, we almost have to build kids that can walk through a room full of drugs and alcohol and just understand that it's not something that they should be doing. It's not something for them.
And one thing they have to understand is with that addiction, as it makes them feel better and then it makes them feel better, all of a sudden they're not feeling better. They're
Right.
sick if they don't take it. So this is not a glamorous fix-all for your life because all of a sudden you have got to have it or you will be deadly sick. So there's chasing that they have to understand this is not something you can just walk away from and have enjoyed it. There's no enjoyment in it once you become addicted and you become drug sick from it.
And Pam, I don't know if anybody's ever told you this, but the average amount of time somebody has to go through rehab before they can fully kick, like an opioid addiction is 17 times.
Oh my gosh. look what lies ahead for our children if we don't stop this.
Right, right. Kevin, I don't know, how many times did you try to quit drinking?
Oh, I forget about it. Yeah, it was a daily event. I had to look in the mirror and become disappointment, or to lie to myself. But yeah, it just was almost an impossible hill to climb.
Yeah.
Right.
If
One
I
thing I need to say about the organization and the programs that we put on, you know, we'll travel almost anywhere to talk to parents. We have added presentations for kids. Just last week, Erin and I were, and other people from Addiction is Real spoke to eighth graders. That's really an important age. And they were so receptive to our message. Um, but I really want to put it out there for people who feel like they have an organization, a Girl Scout troop, a Boy Scout troop, a team, a high school, a church. Please contact us so we can come out and educate your parents and the kids so that we can stop more and more addiction from happening. And I know my Justin, I'm so proud of Addiction is Real and where it has gone, especially since Erin joined our organization. I am so proud of it. But I also know that my Justin is so proud of it and of me telling his story. That's what keeps me going and allows me to tell his story and gives me strength. I know he's proud.
That's
I
right.
agree, Pam, and wasn't watching those eighth graders' face the other day.
Oh,
So one of our board members, Tiffany, lost her child when he was either 6 days away from turning 13 or 6 days after he turned 13. Went to a slumber party. Adults in the house that had been using fentanyl had left it out. The kids experimented with it. When she tells her story, though, it's such a gift that she gives these kids. She starts talking about her son Zach like he's still alive, and talks about his personality, and he's also one of those ADHD kids, and is the biggest and brightest in the room and super self-confident. And then I loved it when she moved to the fact that then he got a little bit older, started going through puberty, and he wasn't as sure about himself. He wasn't as confident. He started noticing friends were annoyed with him. And watching those kids' faces when it went from, okay, this kid was super confident when he was 9, 10, 11 years old, but things got really hard. And that's something that all of our kids deal with, specifically in that age group. Life is just difficult. And so it was fun to watch their faces, but also realize how important that message is. And
Yeah,
so if we can, we can share that with anybody, go home, find a kid in your life and just ask them, how is your mental health today?
yeah,
How are you doing? One of the things we've really noticed is a kid that age group specifically, find stuff to do with them side by side, drive them somewhere, get some ice cream, work out together, cook something, watch a sports game. And just in the middle of it, make sure you're bringing those kind of topics up. Let them know a difficult time that you've had recently and what you've had to do to get past it. I just think so much of this comes from these kids feeling like their difficulty in life is so unique, and it's not. You know, all of us have experienced the same kind of things. It's just we are older, we have tools, we have resources, we know how to take ourselves to a counselor. Kids oftentimes don't even know how to vocalize that. So I don't know, Pam, did you notice that on the kids' faces when she
oh my
switched to that
gosh.
piece of the story?
When she mentioned that a police officer came to her home and told her that Zach was dead, all these heads popped up. They were listening, but that hit them. He was their age. These were eighth graders who were 13 years old, and so was Zach. It was powerful. And I cannot tell you how many hugs we got from these eighth graders who are usually, too cool for that thing.
yeah,
So many hugs. But I also want to say that when we present, when we educate parents, we provide a booklet and it has steps in there on how to prevent and what to look for. But we don't start with eighth graders, we start with preschoolers. how to talk to your preschooler. Not that we think they're going to go sit under a kitchen sink and drink somebody's beer,
Kevin.
but yeah, Kevin. Uh,
Whiskey.
but we
Whiskey.
talk to them about, having good friends and trusting mom and dad and not sharing medicines with friends. And then as the child gets older, we present more ideas for conversations to keep healthy, open conversations, and so that your child also feels comfortable talking to you about these things as they get older.
Yeah, and the power in a small organization that's I said there's nothing stronger than a mom that's really going to try and fix things. And these moms have done it. This last year, we were brought into 72 events across Missouri and Kansas. And in those 72 events, we were in front of over 40,000 individuals face to face, which is pretty unreal, but it also speaks to how important this topic is and how it is one that communities really want to be educated on. So as Pam said, we have grant funding in certain areas. We have to figure things out in order for us to be able to go out and do it. But if your community has specifically a large event, I love those smaller groups, but if there's a big outdoor event, we now have our interactive display is actually built into 2 trailers for us to bring out within the community. So, we can pull it right into a school picnic. We can be there all day. We can talk to as many parents as want to come over to us, but that's what we're here for. And we're really excited if there are any of your listeners that would like to reach out and like to schedule that. I'm going to give my email address if that's okay,
Please.
Kevin.
Please.
Okay, so it's Erin, ERIN, at addictionisreal.org. So it's ERIN at addictionisreal.org. And let's get that conversation started and figure out, how we can best serve your community, because it's one that every community across Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, Pam and I actually went to Connecticut a couple of years ago as well. We're pretty unique, and what we do is really unique, but I think the thing that we're all most proud of is that it is such a positive message. It's such a life-changing message, but it's one that we shouldn't be scared of. It's one that we need to just, face head on, and that's what we're doing. So thank you to people like Kevin for having us on his podcast. But if there's ever anything else like this we can do, we are open to it and ready.
I also want to mention that, we've been traveling around with our dog and pony show for parents. During COVID, we were not able to do that. So we created a movie that gets our message out. And you can also, if you go on our website, addictionisreal.org, you can view the film that we produced. And well, I'm just going to brag because we earned a Telly Award, which is a cousin to the Emmy for non-broadcast films. And we won that for the country.
Wow.
This film is powerful and it's
Yes.
wonderful, and I couldn't be more proud of it. But it's a way that a parent can start to get that message. They can sit at home and watch the film and then decide, do we come to your group? And which we would love to do.
Man, you brought the personal in with the professionals, that you have it blended together, that it becomes real, and that the simple way of reaching out, addiction is real. I, I think anybody and everybody would understand that it says everything right there. And anything I can do, please don't hesitate to reach out. And for anybody who does listen, if they belong to a community organization, or in city politics, or school, I mean, it's limitless. It's unlimited to where you are at. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that addiction is real, is able to give you the tools and the hope and the strength to carry on.
Absolutely, Kevin. So our vision statement, or I'm sorry, Pam, let me
No,
real
go
quick.
ahead.
Our vision statement is: we envision communities where every child is surrounded by trusted, informed adults, and addiction is addressed openly, not hidden in silence. We help communities and families prevent what is preventable and support kids to lead lives. So anything that falls into that category is something we're going to get really jazzed about.
Yeah, man.
And the one thing I always say when I present to parents is that the three most dangerous words a parent can say is not my child.
Wow. Wow.
That's what I did. I did not think it was possible for my Justin.
Yeah. But that's the whole story, is that you don't know what you don't know. Now you know. And
Right?
it's going to be so beautiful. I always try to close up if is to say, Erin, Pam, whatever you want to say to who you ever want to say it to, for as long as you want to say it for.
Thanks,
We're
Kevin.
on it. We're doing that every day, Kevin. Thanks to people
Yep.
like you for having us on your podcast. This is wonderful help for us.
All right
Thank you,
then.
Kevin, so much.
Wow. Okay. And just in closing, P.S. I got talkitis, but I listened too. I listened attentively. But the story is, whatever you have, bring it. I can't say it enough. Is that this can be preventable. It can be stopped. It can be understood. And
Yes.
and when you have an understanding, you know, all the others, they just flee. You know, you can't. Uh, it's, so anyway, here we go. I is going to close up here unless you two have something you feel the need to say.
You know
I
what,
think
Pam?
I've said it all. Oh,
How about this though? How about if you could go back and talk to Justin when he was 10 or 11, what would you have said differently?
interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
If I could go back and talk to Justin, well, I might put him in bubble wrap, but
Exactly.
but I would, first of all, I'd have to be more educated because, Justin should be 38 now. 38 years ago, 35 years ago, I didn't know anything. We didn't talk
Right.
about this. So I would first be educated and then I would stay on him and I would follow the guidelines in our booklet that makes it easy for him to talk to me.
Right.
I would just say, I can't love you anymore, but you've got to love yourself and you have to understand how to handle your emotions.
Yes.
That's probably one of the most poignant pieces of advice I've heard, and I'm going to take that a step further too. Nobody can help themselves until they really want it. I know
Right.
that's something a lot of parents, if their child's dealing with early exploration or addiction is developed into an active form, stay with them, tell them you love them, but they have to want it for themselves. I'm sure you could speak to
Yes.
that too, Kevin.
Yep.
Yeah. There's so much. It's like the big wheel. And my buddy, who's since gone, who helped me in the road of sobriety, it was called the big wheel. And that big wheel is all those spokes of all that it takes. And those missing spokes, all those spokes helped me to get my big wheel going. And I I hope that I always, I'm a retired show business, so I say I hope I pass the audition because is that it's quite a something. The spring of 26 is going to be outlook is powerful. So
Exactly. Thanks for sharing that with us, and thanks for having us on.
all right
Thank
then,
you, Kevin.
you're welcome. So ladies and gentlemen, this has been Wales Certified, and please have that conversation. Bye now.